just because of all the meetings that were going on around the state that weren't close to WFRC's offices. So it's probably more convenient for people to do this, but it would be nice to get together in person. So. Anyway, it's time to start, I think. We have, I guess, 45 participants, so that's probably enough. I'm going to have, Andrew, would you, I guess I'll welcome everybody here, and then I'm going to ask, it's March 24th, 2022, and it's about 2:03 p.m. And Andrew, we're going to do introductions by having Andrea read names, if that's okay. I think that's just easier. So go ahead and do that. And that'll also let us know if we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. With us today, we have Mark Shepard, Andrea Pearson, Jeff Silvestrini, Miranda Jones-Cox, Tamara Tran, Laura Hanson, Wayne Benyon, Michaela Jordan, Dan Knope, I think I probably said that wrong and I practiced, Christy Overson, Andrea Olson, Daniel Dugan, Jennifer Elskin, Jim Harvey, Beth Holbrook, Mark Allen, Mike Wykers, Brian Beck, Andrew Gruber, Rob Dolly, Mike Sobchak, Dirk Burton, Robert Dandoy, Carlton Christensen, Joy Petro, Natalie Hall, Ken Pippin, Ned Hacker, Rod Westbrook, Justin Lee, Ben Wethrich, Lorraine Kamalu, Shul Bishop, Troy Walker, Rosie Hernandez, Monica Zoltansky, Marion Florence, Wayne Harper, Lauren Victor, Ted Knowlton, Scott Wardle, Susie Swim, Jeff Scott, Jordan Taft, Bill Harris, Kevin Jepson, Russ Fox, Christy Dahlberg, Blaine Fackrell, and Julie Bjornstead. Thanks, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Andrea. Welcome, everybody. And if we'd missed anybody, would you just put your name in the chat so we have a record of that you're here, and we'll get rolling. So the first item of business is to consider the minutes of our meeting of January 27th of this year, and also the financial statements and check registers for January or December and January were part of the packet. So if you've somebody's had a chance to review those, I'd look for a motion to approve them.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Carlton Christensen. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those are approved, and we'll go to item 2. So my chair's report, we're going to spend time talking about the legislative session and some significant things that were passed, and including significant funding for transportation. And we have some special guests today. We have Senator Wayne Harper and Representative Mike Schultz and Representative Steve Waldrip. And I just want to say I had, wearing my WFRC hat and my League of Cities hat, I had the opportunity to work with all 3 of these gentlemen during the session. And, you know, I think that we were successful in the session in moving forward our transportation goals between the collaboration of the legislature and the governor. We have some things that happened that are consistent with the Wasatch Choice vision, and including I think that the legislation that was enacted will provide transportation choices and support housing options. And I can put a big exclamation mark after that. Preserve open space, remarkable funding for active transportation again this year, and also linking economic development with transportation and housing. And I just want to say, I'm going to turn this over to Miranda in a minute, but I just want to say specifically to Senator Harper and Representatives Schultz and Waldrop that for me, this session was different in a very encouraging way. I felt that we had the kind of collaboration and working together on significant legislation in a number of areas, transportation particularly we're going to talk about today, but other areas as well, that was unprecedented as far as I know. I really appreciate the legislature and you guys specifically, being accessible during the session and taking input from us, and trying to balance everything that you had to balance. But all in all, I really felt that we had the kind of partnership that is actually going to help us continue to make great policy in the state of Utah. So thank you to you guys, and I look forward to hearing from you about each of the things that you're going to talk about. And with that, I will turn this over to Miranda to tee it up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate it. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Kind of like a few of us, I'm also squatting. I'm down at the UDOT conference in Price today. And so let me just get my screen up.
And Miranda, while you're doing that, I'll just note to Mayor Silvestrini, your kind words about our Senator Harper is with us, Representative Waldrip is with us, and Representative Schultz will be joining us shortly. So you can express your appreciation for the collaboration again if you'd like to when he joins us on all of our behalf.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, and maybe just let me know if we do see Representative Schultz hop on. He can kind of weigh in when he can. But I just kind of wanted to give a brief overview to the council of where we ended up with the legislative session. Like Mayor Silvestrini alluded to, it was a great year, a productive year, and it was a very collaborative year with many of our different partners, both on this call and some of our others, in trying to accomplish not only the goals of the Wasatch Choice Vision, but just pushing for sustainable growth amongst our communities. And we're just really happy with the outcome of this session. So kind of specifically wanted to highlight a few things. Legislature passed 513 bills this year. That number, I think, has ticked up over the years, but what really has ticked up over the years is the budget that we've seen the legislature pass. A $28 billion budget. I think that was fiscal year 22, and then $26 billion in fiscal year 23. And part of that is because of the American Rescue Plan Act funding that the legislature still had funding to appropriate. But Andrew, and maybe you can drop it in the chat for everyone, but one thing that we like to point folks to, if you have specific questions about what happened during session, what our priorities were, what the outcomes were, is you can check our legislative session summary, which is a little more comprehensive than what we'll get into here today. So to quickly go through, I'm kind of going to hit two things. We're going to hit funding and appropriations, and then a few key pieces of legislation that we saw come out of the legislative session this year. And we'll have Representative Schultz, Representative Waldrip, and Senator Harper kind of speak to their respective bills that they brought forward, or funding that they were instrumental in helping pass. And so first,
Miranda, let me suggest, because
Sure.
we've got Senator Harper and Representative Waldrip with us and Representative Schultz not yet. Will you just flip the order and we'll come back to the appropriations, please?
You got it. Yep, we'll start with legislation. So maybe then we'll just turn it over quickly. We're going to hit two bills here, and so we'll start with Senator Harper, if you're willing. And that bill is SB 140, which is Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone Amendment. SB 140 makes some amendments to SB 217, which was passed last year, and Senator Harper championed that bill as well. And so Senator Harper, I don't know if you'd mind weighing in here and kind of walking us through what the bill does and sharing any other thoughts about the legislative session with us.
So this team of Wasatch Front and UDOT and UTA and a lot of other stakeholders, the URA and other related groups, a couple years ago identified the need to do something in order to maximize the benefit of transit along the Wasatch Front. And last year we came together, as you've highlighted here, Senate Bill 217. And that bill went through and set up the housing and transit reinvestment zones. along Front Runner with the intent that within a certain distance from each Front Runner station, there would be the ability to get tax increment if certain conditions were met. But for analysis, gap analysis, some findings, and then some requirements as to including affordable and attainable housing within the HTRZ zone, as well as going to making sure that you had at least 50 units per acre. And we knew at that point, and we took 15% of the future tax increment from the state's portion, and that goes into the TTIP fund to help out with transit projects. We knew that that was a great start on it and a great marker that was placed down. However, we also knew that other things would need to be dealt with. So this year we took a look at what happened, what needed to happen, and it was quite in favor. Everybody said the HTRZ should not be limited just to Front Runner, to the community runner stations. It should be available to TRAX and the BRT. TRAX right now is in Salt Lake County, but BRT is in Utah County, and it's going into Weber County fairly soon, and there will be a couple BRT routes in Salt Lake and Davis County in the future as well. So what we did was, and in conjunction, I appreciate Salt Lake County working so intensely on this in order to make sure it happened right. But we expanded the HTRZ to TRAX lines and agreed to, for the time being, to do 8 per county and bus rapid transit 3 per county. And then, so that expanded it out. We clarified the distances that could be around a HTRZ and a TRAX, since they're not as regional in nature as Front Runner. So the BRT and the TRAX have a zone that can be up to 1/4 of a mile. We clarified the fact that there needs to be, a number of those units or multifamily units, meaning that they're more than 1 bedroom. This one's for Cameron Deal and people like him who really would like to have 2 or 3 bedroom apartments or units around the TRAX or light rail station. And we've also made sure that we put in code that there's a requirement that 10% of the units within an HTRZ be affordable housing. So we're making sure that those are reaching out to all the interested and needed stakeholders. And one other major change that was made in that, since we had the BRT is not always in a high density area or high traffic area. Sometimes they go through the routes will be going through communities, neighborhoods within communities. We allowed that to be considered for that. If you have a BRT that's 39 to 49 units per acre, you can get up to 60% of the tax increment rather than the full 80%. So it's a kind of a step down, but only in a limited situation. We really wanted to go through and make sure that all of the policies, everything we want to do is in place in order to deal with and address some of the housing issues that and needs we have in the county. So that's a summary of what that bill does. And again, thanks to everybody who worked on it. And I am hoping and encouraging that next year we'll actually have somebody that will step up and do an HTRZ and lead the way, because we've got the committee that's looking forward to working on that and to getting one in place.
Yeah, thanks, Senator. I appreciate that. Yeah, I would echo what Senator Harper has to say, just with all the parties that came together to provide input on this bill and helping make it the best version that it could potentially be. So like he mentioned Salt Lake County and others, and just appreciate that. Yeah, and hopefully here soon. I think there are maybe a few coming down the pipeline, and so hopefully we'll see HTRZs come to fruition. And I think I saw Commissioner Fackrell on here say, what are these acronyms? And so my apologies for in the effort to be brief, left out some information. But HTRZ again stands for housing and transit reinvestment zones, and BRT stands for bus rapid transit. So, and with
I'd just like to say, you know, this bill is also an example of what I was talking about in terms of the collaboration that we had. And, you know, we had you know, we had UAC, Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, UTA, UDOT, and others, Salt Lake County, all engaged in, you know, honing this bill to be, you know, I think more acceptable and you know, talking about what might be unintended consequences of some of these things. And, you know, I think actually that whole process just made this a better bill. And that's true for a number of the other ones too.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Okay, well, let's move on to our second piece of legislation that we'll discuss, which is Housing Affordability Amendments, or HB 462 by Representative Steve Waldrip. And Representative Waldrip, I think we have you on the call as well. And so please feel free to jump in here, share. There's a lot that this bill covers, and we certainly can't go into all the details, but we'll just love your input on the purpose of this bill and what it's intending to accomplish, and anything else you'd like to add about the session.
And Representative, before you do that, I just like to say, I actually want to thank all the planners at UTA and MAG and WFRC that worked on this. They worked hard and around the clock to come up with things quickly. You know, sometimes that meant, you know, burning the midnight oil on Friday night and things like that to you know, get us ideas and language that would work on this, particularly with respect to the station area planning part of it. So thank you. And also thank you again to Representative Waldrip. That was a good partnership on this whole bill, which addresses not just this, but a lot of other housing issues that are important for our state.
Well, we certainly almost lost Andrew during the session. We're glad he made it through. He was burning the candle on three ends. I'm not sure if that's possible, but he was doing it. And really appreciate. This bill was really designed just to give Andrew and Miranda something to do because they were bored, and we achieved that goal really well. No,
Yeah, Representative Waldrip, you about killed us, but we made it through the session.
I tried. I did my best. No, we had a great process, which I'm happier about than probably anything else, is that the process worked, the intent of the process, which was to produce something that provides significant movement in housing, but does it in a way that allows collaboration and allows the municipalities to retain their uniqueness, their option to design and control and manage things in a way that fits their community. So those were the overarching goals, and I think we met those goals, and I'm really glad that we were able to get to that end. A couple of the things that are really interesting to point out on that point number one, enhanced reporting. So one of the things that we've struggled with from a state standpoint is what do we have and where is it? And so I think one of the sort of unheralded pieces of this legislation is that we will now begin to amass a state database of not only affordable housing, but when do deed restrictions roll off? Where do we have multifamily units? What's our mass look like in different places? And we'll be able to start to paint a picture of housing that will allow us to be, you know, increasingly intentional about what we do from the state level and the feedback that the municipalities get, and they can see, you know, everyone can see what is happening and where it's happening, and I think that'll add a lot of clarity to the decisions we've got to make going forward, because we know this issue is not going away. We've got, we're not going to stop growing anytime soon. It doesn't look like, even though the housing market is getting tougher, we're still growing like crazy. And so that data, I think, will help inform us in years into the future on how we tackle this project going forward. The station area plan concept actually came about when Andrew made a presentation, I think, with Cameron Deal, on what do we have in the Wasatch Choice vision. You know, what does that look like? And as I was watching that, and I was thinking about my role as the Housing Affordability Commissioner, it just struck me that we already have all of these really smart people getting together, figuring out what makes the most sense from a transit standpoint and where we want people to sort of congregate and disperse from. And that work, that hard work is already done. And how do we sort of leapfrog on that and take that work that's already been done and use it to create a housing plan that matches that great thought, without, getting away from some of the pitfalls that happen with NIMBYism and the things that we have to deal with from a political standpoint. And so that was really the start. And as we looked at that Wasatch Choice Vision document, it just became very, very clear that we have this thing that we can just build on. We don't have to start from scratch. And having Andrew and Miranda involved in that, and Cameron and Mayor Silvestrini and the board, because everybody already knew what that was. Everybody already knew what the landscape looked like and what we were painting from. And so using that as the basis to develop this station area plan concept really became more and more clear as the best way to go. And so taking that concept and saying, okay, well, we already have this ability to move people in mass from these particular points in our cities. Let's build density intelligently around those points, and do it in a way that, again, matches the community's needs, not a blanket, hey, you've got to do 50 units per acre or whatever that is, but allowing the cities to take into account the state's goals of density and sustainability and air quality and walkability. I mean, all those things that we want to encourage, but then do it within the context of what the city's needs are and what, we've got some very specific, examples of where there was a desire to put dense housing where it didn't fit. And this allows the cities to adjust to what is in their best interest, while still pushing forward those overriding state goals. So I don't know, I can't see the bottom of this slide, Miranda. I don't know what's on the bottom of this one. Is there anything down on the bottom that I can't quite see there? I think I see, is it just the two and then the two bullets down there?
It is, yeah. Can everyone else
Okay.
see that okay?
Yeah, I
Okay.
just couldn't see if there was writing on the bottom that I couldn't see the last part of the slide.
Gotcha.
So anyways, that was the genesis of the discussion, and then allowing the cities to take that concept and then with a little bit of a push. I mean, this, we're not asking nothing here. We're asking cities to do a hard thing by looking ahead and sometimes bucking the NIMBY crowd and saying, this is where we need to grow, and giving the cities the opportunity to do that work with sort of this umbrella of, hey, everybody's doing this. This isn't just us. We're all in this together. Wherever there's one of these stations, we want to have density because that is the best interest of our region, our city, our state, and creating that opportunity, I think, has been it's been really fun. It was actually really fun to just kind of wind Miranda and Andrew and Jeff and Cameron and just watch them go. And I just show up every once in a while and wave and smile and say good job, and then I'd walk away and let them do hard things. So that was really very fun.
Yeah. But it actually was fun. And it was, it's fun to create with a bunch of talented people, including you, Representative. And I can't stress enough on this, how important I think it is to get the data collection that this bill is going to require. And that does impose some additional burden on local government to get that information together, but it will enable us to make such better policy if we know what we have and we know whether we're actually moving the needle on affordability. And I think it will also maybe direct where we need to focus on if there are, choke points or problems that we see from that data. We'll be able to know how to react to that and what to do about it in the future.
Well, and again, it takes you from looking at it like this as one property to looking at a, kind of an area and saying, okay, what makes sense long-term in this area and how can we most effectively do that? And one thing that we should add too is that we put money aside so that, as the municipalities start to engage in this planning process, that there's resources for them to draw on. So we're not asking them to bear this burden on their own, but we put significant resources aside. I think we've got $5 million initially set aside in that account, so that we're not creating an unfunded mandate for all of this planning, which can be very expensive and time consuming and require a lot of staff time. And so we want to make sure that we're giving adequate resources to accomplish this task.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the best.
Mr. Chair, can I add just a few points on this in response here?
Sure.
Well, first, let me just start by echoing the appreciation for Senator Harper, Representative Schultz, and Representative Waldrip for being so collaborative, working with us to achieve the best outcomes. You said it at the top, Mayor Silvestrini. I want to repeat it. And I think what Representative Waldrip did very artfully was not to dictate a particular outcome, but to bring the parties together, public sector, private sector, local, state, and say, we all have shared objectives. We know that. Now let's work together to figure out how to advance those objectives. And, you all heard this before. There was consideration of mandating particular types of zoning in particular locations, like everybody that has a transit station must do X or may not do Y. Other states are doing that around the country. We didn't think that was the best approach. And I think Representative Waldrip, when you note the Wasatch Choice vision, the thing that I think we appreciated so much is that your embrace of that vision is reflective of your embrace of all of us, because everybody here in this virtual room, the Wasatch Choice vision is yours, right? It's not like WFRC just creates that. We work with you about what you want for your communities, where you want development to occur and how you want that to occur. And that's embodied in the Wasatch Choice vision. And so that approach is really, really important. We are avoiding, Miranda and I and others from UTA and from MAG and all of our partners are avoiding in this meeting going into lots and lots of detail about this intentionally. We'll save you from that. But I do just want to note that in mid-April, along with the League of Cities and Towns, we're going to be doing detailed training for all the communities that have transit stations that are going to need to do these station area plans. Those are April 13th and 14th. More information is coming out about those already. As Representative Waldrip said, there's going to be resources available through WFRC to your communities to do technical planning assistance. We want to help you and work with you. We're going to be working hand in hand with UTA and the League and MAG on that as well. There's a lot of hard work to come. Many of you, most of you have been doing so much of this already around your transit station areas, but my gosh, with the growth that we have coming, those are such good areas to absorb more development. And we've got a lot of work to do, and we're really excited about it. I feel like this bill is in some ways, it's a game changer, and it recognizes what we really need to do in the future, having those centers and nodes of development, mixed use and multifamily in those locations that make so much sense in some ways, so that we can preserve the character of our existing single family neighborhoods and more rural communities. So Representative Waldrip, just again, hats off to you and to everybody here for the partnership. And like now the real work begins.
Well, yeah, and this group doesn't know how much effort that Andrew and Miranda and their team put into this, and Cameron Deal and his team. It was literally 24/7 for about the last 2 weeks of the session. I mean, it was just constant, back forth, getting things right. And especially when you look at this at the backdrop of what other states are doing right now in the West. You got Washington and California and Oregon that are just doing upzoning statewide or citywide, and complete disregard to planning and any type of intelligent growth. It's just growth. And being very intentional with this project and this approach is really going to make a big difference for, I think, for Utah.
And I want to say also, there's a player that maybe doesn't come to this meeting, but there was involved in and heavily involved with this bill, and that's the Property Rights Coalition.
That's right.
And there was also collaboration there. I mean, we had some meetings with them that where we, some of them were, I don't know if I would call them heated, but we did have some really forthright discussions about this kind of a tug of war to make sure that we got good policy out of this. And, we did some balancing and some compromise on that as well, but especially on the stationary plan thing and the timing on that, we were at least able to talk to them about the challenges that all this planning requires in terms of the timing of it and the resources that have to be devoted to it. So that's another feature of all of this that was gratifying, is that we got to some pretty good consensus with various stakeholders.
Yeah, and Beth Holbrook also with UTA was instrumental in this. I don't know if she's been mentioned today. And really, the bottom line of this whole thing was we came into this process and said, we're going to agree. We're going to find a solution, and we're going to agree on the solution. And it really relies on the good faith of everybody to now take what we've created and make it work. And to the extent we can do that, we're all going to be a lot happier in the long run.
Perfect. Thank you, Representative Waldrip, and everyone else for their comments. And yeah, just again, echo what everyone has said. This was a lot of hard work, and just appreciate Representative Waldrip for coming to the table and working with all of us on it. So let's go ahead and head back to funding and appropriations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Representative.
Miranda, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah, Mayor.
Representative Waldrop, thank you for being willing to work with so many different divergent groups and everything else. You are doing exactly what we expected you to do there, and we really appreciate it, and it's not unrecognized.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor Caldwell. Couldn't have
Miranda,
said it better myself. Yes.
Could I just say something as well? Thank you.
Please.
I just wanted to thank Representative Waldrop as well, and WFRC and the league really, and our UTA, TOD people really just did an outstanding job. And having those discussions with the Property Rights Coalition was definitely really helpful for me to understand where they were coming from. And I think that really helped us to fine tune the process. So nice work, everyone.
Thanks, Beth. Appreciate that. Okay, we could get like a Team Waldrip club going on here too. Everyone has a lot of good things to say about the representative, which is awesome. Before I think Representative Schultz should be on with us now. But as we transition now back to funding and appropriations, kind of want to just maybe frame that conversation with the shared principles for infrastructure investment. These principles are shared by our local partners and were, I think, agreed upon last year for SMART principles for infrastructure investment. And we saw that last year with HB 433, which put $1 billion towards transportation investment. And we saw yet again another large transportation investment again this legislative session. And so Representative Schultz, I don't know if you would just like to talk a little bit about the funding that was appropriated this year and maybe why it's so important and timely at this where we're at right now in our transportation space.
Hey, thank you, Miranda. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'm on my way to St. George with the family, and so I apologize. I'm not one in there in person, two, not even on video. So I was actually thinking about this, and I think we all ought to make a commitment at our next meeting to try to be there in person if we can. I miss seeing everybody. I'm kind of zoomed out, to be honest with you, for a little bit. I'd like to get to where we can see everybody and meet in person, because that's one of the best parts about this job is getting to interact and see all you guys. So I missed that. First, I'd like to thank Andrew, Miranda, Mayor Silvestrini. It's been mentioned, Representative Waldrip, Senator Harper, President Adams, Speaker Wilson, our budget chairs, everybody that worked on transportation, housing. It was a big monumental year, as you guys are hearing about. We know the budget was a big budget year, right? And most of that money was one-time money, just like you're seeing in most of your cities and counties. We don't believe it's sustainable long-term, the amount of growth that we've seen. And so we as a legislature got together and decided, how can we best spend this one-time money? And we made the decision to spend it on generational investments. And the two things that floated to the top was water and transportation. And with your guys' help, the help of everybody that I mentioned already, we were able to set aside $1.3 billion this year to go towards transportation as a whole. A good chunk of that money got set aside in the base budget. Almost $300 million got set aside in the base budget early on in the session. And that was for double tracking front runner. Miranda brought up HB 433. Part of HB 433 last year was bonding for front runner. And the TTIF was going to pay for that bonding for double tracking a front runner. Well, we took that money and decided not to bond and used cash for that the double tracking of front runner, and we did that in the base budget. We also, in doing that, what that did is it actually freed up the money in TTIF to be used towards other transportation or transit projects going into the future. So if we would have bonded with that, that would have taken the lion's share of the money out of TTIF just to pay those bond payments. So that was a huge move right there in itself. And then we put another $150 million of the 1.3 billion into double tracking of front runner and the point of the mountain transit, which totaled about $450 million going into transit and active transportation. I want to point out, we fully funded the whole UDOT list, Transportation Commission's list, which this group plays a large role in, of the active transportation projects. $46 million, that whole list got funded this year for active transportation. That wasn't anticipated to happen for several years. So we did that all this year. That still left $850 million to go towards roads. We put that money towards roads. The lion's share of that money goes towards the Transportation Commission to allocate and respect that Transportation Commission's project process, which WFRC also plays a huge role in. Just real quick, let me tell you kind of the way we envision this working and what we see happening here. So the $850 million will, roughly $850 million will go towards the transportation list, the commission's list that's currently programmed. That will move almost all of the transportation projects on that list up 1 to 4 years. So everybody in the state benefits. And then next, after that, the Transportation Commission will go on the backside, roughly in year 2029, give or take a little bit, but roughly 2029, and add on another year of programming and funding for some of the highest priorities all across the state. And so it was important to all of us involved, President Adams, Senator Harper, everybody else involved in this, to make sure that we respected the prioritization process through the commission and through the work that WFRC does. And so we were able to do that. I just want to point out one other thing, and I just can't thank UTA enough. This year, we worked with UTA, we worked with Representative Christofferson, And he had a bill that moved capital development that has state funds attached to it under UDOT. UTA was fantastic to work with through that process. And I just want to say this is the first year, most of you know that I've been a huge advocate of getting money put towards transit, state money put towards transit. This was the first year that I did not receive any pushback from any of my colleagues to put money towards that. It's finally starting to catch on. I think UTA and the three commissioners are doing a fantastic job. I can't thank them enough for all they do for all of us, for our communities. And I appreciate the opportunity we had to work with them to get there. And the fruits of that labor show in almost $450 million going towards transit across the state. And then also that freeing up TTIF. So that's all I've got. Miranda, Andrew, thank you guys. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Representative, this is Jeff Silvestrini. You may have missed it when we were talking about this earlier, but I just want to express my gratitude and WFRC's gratitude, and I'm sure that of many others, for the collaborative session that we had, and the willingness of the legislature to take input from all different sides to effect better policy. I think on a number of areas, transportation, but other things as well, housing. We reached some really positive results on some difficult issues where there may have been some strong disagreement when we started out, but by listening to each other and working together, we came out with good products. So thank you for that.
Mayor, I just want to add to that also the retail sales incentives that came out of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I just want to add that into the list too. It was, we're facing some tough decisions as a state and how we deal with growth overall. I just can't thank everybody enough and echo the words that you mentioned. And kudos to you, Mayor, helping bring people together from all sides to have a good process. And we did accomplish some good things, and we did it in a collaborative process. Not everybody was happy about every aspect of it, we're here to say, but we did some good things and we did it collaboratively. So thank you.
Thank you. And I learned in my days practicing law that when you get a good compromise, pretty much everybody's unhappy with it. So.
Yeah, thanks, Representative. We just appreciate you being one of our champions on transportation, and all of the work and effort that you've put into it. And, again, respecting the process and also focusing on multimodal transportation as it's such a vital piece of addressing our growth moving forward. So we really appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Carlton.
Well, I just wanted to thank Representative Schultz for his commitment to transit and working with us. And, we're some of us are down here at the UAC conference in Price. And one of the conversations I've had a lot today is with other corners of the state who, from one aspect or another, are looking for some transit solutions in their own communities. And I think it is it's a statewide discussion, and we appreciate his leadership on the issue. So thank you.
Thanks, Carlton.
Okay, thanks. Miranda, you got more.
Yeah, I dropped my slides, but I have just a few more really quick. So bear with me as we just finish up where we left off. There's just one more piece that we think is worth noting to the group here, and that is a few appropriations for growth and planning. These appropriations came from the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, but not only were they requested in the Governor's budget, they were also recommended by the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission that worked on putting together different sustainable growth strategies, over the interim, and so this came forward in the legislative session. And just to kind of touch on these briefly, the $1.65 million for technical planning assistance would go to a couple different places. $600,000 that would go to UDOT for their technical planning assistance grant program. And then there'd be $150,000 annually going to each of the state's 7 associations of governments to help with their technical planning assistance. And what's great about this is that it makes our programs and the assistance we can provide to our communities more robust. But as Carlton mentioned, some of us here down at UAC, some of the discussions that we've been hearing today is that, some of our AOG partners and our smaller, more rural communities maybe don't have the expertise or assistance in their communities that they need to adequately plan for growth. And so we see this appropriation as a wonderful step forward in helping address those growth challenges and getting the technical planning in place for various different communities. And then second, there was 1 million. Yeah, Mayor.
Well, I was just going to say about both of these, Miranda. There were a bunch of people who actually, fought like lions and tigers to keep this funding. It was proposed, it was recommended by the governor's office, and then it looked like it was going to evaporate. But I'd like to especially thank Mayor Ramsey, who really championed for this funding. And I know there are lots of others but this is going to be really important, and particularly the next piece you're going to talk about in terms of the statewide conversation about growth that we need to have to bring our communities along with the reality of the unavoidable growth pressure we're facing.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, and along with Mayor Ramsey was Mayor Silvestrini, and reaching out to the Executive Appropriations Committee chairs and others in the legislature, asking them to support these appropriations, and really think that had an impact. As you'll see, it's funded in full as it was originally requested, and so we appreciate that. With the $1 million for the statewide growth conversation, Laura, feel free to weigh in here if you're still on the call with us. I know you had to hop off around 3, but the statewide growth conversation is intended to be a community engagement campaign to help understand communities' attitudes about growth and also educate communities about how we can grow sustainably with various policies and good planning. And so again, our partners at GOPB are leading out on these 2 efforts, and really happy that they included these in the governor's budget and are just as passionate about it as we are. And so again, Laura, I don't know if you want to add anything here briefly.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to jump on the appreciation train and just give a huge shout out to Wasatch Front Regional Council, Andrew and Miranda, Mayor Silvestrini, and Mayor Ramsey, as well as the League staff, and especially to the legislature for funding both of these important items. We are so excited. They're going to have such a good impact and makes such a difference for our local communities that are trying to navigate the pressures of growth. And I'm hopeful that this statewide growth conversation will result in some really clear direction. We're hoping to come out of this process with some big moves, which may be strategic investments that might help us retain what makes Utah special as we continue to grow, as well as maybe some policy direction ideas that we can explore in future sessions together through the collaborative process that we do so well here in Utah. So big thank you to all of you. We're so excited about it, and we're ready to get to work.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate it. So I don't know if Andrew, Mayor Silvestrini, anything else as we kind of wrap up the legislative session piece of things.
Just to really briefly, I just report, I guess, that it is still the chair's report, I guess, that I had actually the pleasure of accompanying Mayor Ramsey and Commissioner Stevenson and Miranda and Andrew to Washington, D.C., and to work with our WFRC lobbyist. And we were able to not only attend the National Association of Regional Councils convention, in the midst of the legislative session. We were kind of occupied with that, but we got to visit with all 6 of our congressional representatives, senators and representatives, and talk to them about the federal infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure funding bill, and how important it was for us that our entire Utah delegation write letters of support for the grant requests that may be forthcoming. And we thank them for the passage of that. We knew that some of them didn't philosophically agree with the bill, particularly the magnitude of the money that was spent, but we did impress upon them the importance of helping us in Utah land some of that money because of the growth pressures we face and the need that we have for it. And since it's been passed and appropriated, we asked for their help. And I can report to you that all 6 of them indicated that they would do that. And we actually had a really good interaction with all of them. So it was very worthwhile on behalf of this organization.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And Andrew, unless you have anything else, maybe I can just, that might be a good segue for just a quick, brief update on federal funding, if that's okay. I can't see you if you're raising your hand. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrew. So just real briefly, don't want to spend too much time on this, but as our focus has been on state legislative policy and funding over the past several months, we are kind of shifting our mindset back again to federal funding and the federal infrastructure bill and what that really looks like now that it can be implemented. Congress has passed their fiscal year 22 budget, and now the bill is starting to be implemented more rapidly. For a quick and again brief update on what the bill was, it's a 5-year bill. A majority of the infrastructure bill is formula funds. So depending on the program, it can increase funding for programs that we have here at Wasatch Front Regional Council. For example, our STP funding is going to see increases anywhere from 10 to 20% from the previous year of the first reauthorization bill compared to this infrastructure bill. And so now we're in the process of including and incorporating these increases in the infrastructure bill into the work that we do here at Wasatch Front Regional Council. Additionally, with the Unified Transportation Plan, we're seeing these similar increases, and we're working together with our partners to update the assumptions in the Unified Plan and reflect the increased numbers, and further refining the assumptions that are already in the plan. Separate from the formula funds that are coming through the infrastructure bill, there's also discretionary grant programs. We've shared a lot of information about this before, that there's upwards of 25 new discretionary transportation grant programs in the infrastructure bill, and we're starting to see information be trickled out by the U.S. Department of Transportation about either opportunities that are now available for funding applications or that will be in the near future. And so as opportunities continue to present themselves, we are in the process of making sure that you all are aware of those funding opportunities. We'll see I think our newsletter should be going out next week, which will highlight some of these various grant programs. And so please keep an eye out for those. Keep an eye out for specific contact and emails about funding opportunities in the infrastructure bill. Not only are there just discretionary grants, but even now there are earmarks again available. So Congress, for their fiscal year 23 budget, are accepting earmarks, and Utah's congressional offices, our House members, not our Senate members, but our House members will be receiving applications for earmarks for this upcoming budget year. And so want to make sure that you all are aware of these opportunities. And so please keep your eyes and ears open as we send and push out information. And as always, please feel free to reach out and let us know if you have questions and how we can be helpful in sharing that information with you all and helping you take the best advantage of these funds as we can. So with that, I think that's it for federal piece of things. So Mayor Silvestrini, I'll just turn things back to you.
Okay, thanks, Miranda. Unless there are any other questions, I think we're ready to move on, see if we have any public comment. Andrea, do we have anybody who's wanted to comment online or?
I haven't seen anything, Mayor, but let me just look through here.
Okay, does anybody in the meeting want to make public comment? Okay, seeing that, we'll Landry, unless you have something, we'll close that and move on to our Regional Growth Committee report. And Mayor Ramsey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Okay, bear with me. I'm holding my phone because my laptop's in my car. It's a long story. I didn't have time to go back to my car. So I'm holding my phone in a borrowed office, which is so kind. So I hope that this works. We had a really great Regional Growth Committee meeting last week. We've got good people who work hard. And as always, the meeting was good. We just finished the chair's report, which was outstanding. And I appreciate everything that was done. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to everyone who played a role in helping us have such a successful legislative session. It's been a big lift, and it took a lot of work on behalf of a lot of people. So thank you to everyone who was part of that. We just heard about the legislation and the funding, right? That really will advance our shared Wasatch Choice vision. I mean, that's what this infrastructure funding do, all this transportation funding. I'm going to ask Ted Knowlton, he's the Deputy Director here at Wasatch Front Regional Council. Ask Ted if he'll give us a little bit more explanation about how this legislative action ties into our vision. In particular, you know that one of the core elements of the Wasatch Choice vision is the regional transportation plan. And we spent a lot of time working on that as a regional growth committee. The plan is updated every 4 years. We are right now in the third year of that process. So we here at Wasatch Front Regional Council have the responsibility to work together to develop and adopt that vision and the transportation plan. And this funding really ties directly to the goals for that plan. So Ted, if you'll maybe take it away and give some good information about how all of this funding actually is going to help us accomplish the regional transportation plan, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Mayor Ramsey, so much. And if you cannot hear me or see my PowerPoint, please let me know, but I'll jump in. By the way, I'm presenting from sunny Kanab, Utah, which is really exciting. I think Laura Hansen might have been down here in Kanab too. In addition to what Mayor Ramsey said, I want to give you just a general update on what's happening in the process of refreshing Wasatch Choice and the regional transportation plan. Let's jump in. So when we talk about Wasatch Choice, this is bringing everybody together, convening. If there's one role that WFRC plays more than anything else, it's we convene. We bring people together. So we bring together local governments to think long-term about their land use patterns and economic development, how it fits with transportation. That's what we mean when we talk about Wasatch Choice. And then in turn, let's think about how those pieces fit together and advance 10 shared goals, which I will not read aloud, but are there on the right side of that slide. That's what we mean when we talk about Wasatch Choice. Now, when you look at the Wasatch Choice map itself, and you can see the link on that slide, you see these colored areas. I'm zooming into Sully County to just illustrate. These are centers, town centers and urban centers, city centers. And I think one way to think about centers is these are places where local governments have explicitly said, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to add development and growth everywhere. But there are strategic locations where it makes a lot of sense, near transit or what have you. And that's Wasatch Choice. It's thinking about how do we handle the demands of growth in a way that really advances our quality of life. Well, station area planning, we just heard quite a bit about that. Here is what you're looking at. This is kind of the good news of, you know what, the local governments in the WFRC and MAG area, we're being proactive really on a large level already. What you're looking at, if it's a circle, that means there's a station that HB 462 requires. The colors of that circle relates to the type of transit. If it's got a square around it, that means the community has said, look, we think that this is a Wasatch Choice Center, a place where we want to encourage growth in a walkable format that creates a great sense of place in our community. Look at how many of those station areas are also coincide with the Wasatch Choice vision. It's a really incredible story. Now, let's move on to a core part of the Wasatch Choice vision, which is the Regional Transportation Plan. I want to give you a quick update, handful of slides, and then I'll be done. When we talk about the Regional Transportation Plan, we're talking about major roads, regionally significant roads, transit, and trails, updated every 4 years. Mayor Ramsey mentioned, headed towards an update just next year. It's financially constrained. We live within forecast revenue, and we seek to conform to air quality standards. We phase it. What makes sense to build in the first 10 years, second 10 years, etc. And you already heard Representative Schultz and Miranda talk about how the 1.2 billion of infrastructure fits with the Unified Transportation Plan. And it's really heartening to see that. And it makes a lot of sense given how much effort collectively so many voices went into developing the Unified Transportation Plan. Just looking at this cycle, here's where we have been. Last year, we spent a lot of time identifying project ideas. Right now, where we're at is we have a package of projects that we're refining, and we're starting to assess how much do they cost and what can we pay for within that time horizon. That's the space that we're exploring right now. We have this nerdly term that we use to refer to that. It's the preferred scenario, but it's another way to say it's the package of transportation projects that'll be the foundation for the next regional transportation plan. So we just heard about funding that's built on the current transportation plan. The next one that you're gonna review for adoption just next year, we have this preferred scenario, and it's built on the engagement where we've convened all of these partners that you're looking at here. It's been a really an incredible effort. Julie Bjornstad is gonna post a link in the chat box where you can take a look at the preferred scenario, this package of road, transit, and trail projects that we're gonna refine, fiscally constrained, and phase. And so the next thing that we're gonna do, and I'm almost done, is we are going to prioritize these projects. And what we do is we apply Wasatch Choice. We take the 10 goals of Wasatch Choice, and we break them down into metrics to help us understand how do different projects help us improve quality of life, and how do they work with what communities want to achieve locally with their land development and economic development intentions. So that's the process of prioritizing. We're right in the middle of that. All of this Wasatch Choice, it doesn't mean much if we don't implement it. That's certainly funding transportation, but it also means taking the growth concepts that mean that represent where local governments want to go and getting them into planning and zoning so that they can shape private investment. We have together with UDOT, UTA, and Sully County, the Transportation and Land Use Connection Program. Just in the last week, we identified the 2022 awards, which we're super excited about. And it's this story of local governments being proactive to implement the Wasatch Choice. This is my concluding slide. And we're so excited about these 16 awards, the 19 communities that are rolling up their sleeves to do really interesting, important work to deal with the challenges of growth and improving quality of life over time. I hope that whirlwind tour of the update of Wasatch Choice, the Regional Transportation Plan, and how it relates to the significant outcomes of the legislative session. I hope that kind of held together as fast as I went. And I'm happy to answer questions, but Mayor Ramsey, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate that. It's one thing to hear about all the great funding and how successful we are at making sure that we've got good transportation and transit funding, connectivity, active transportation funding. It's another thing to understand how that really works with the plan that we've put together. There's a lot more to it than just going, great, we have a good plan, now we've got some money. There's a lot more to it. So thank you for that, appreciate that. And unless there's any questions, Mr. Chair, that is my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions? If there aren't, then we'll get, Ben, I saw your light come on. You got to get warmed up here, but I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Shepherd to talk about the Transportation Coordinating Committee.
Well, thank you, sir. The Transcom took action last month on some projects. Those are in your packet. If there's any questions on those, you can get with Ben. He'll be able to answer those for you. But before I turn the time over to Ben, I want to give Wayne just a couple of minutes. So Wayne, I'm going to give that to you.
Thank you, Mayor Shepherd. I just want to add to what Miranda mentioned about the additional formula program funding that's part of the new transportation reauthorization. That will allow the regional council to advance several of the projects that are currently on the program that had been approved by the council previously so that they can be constructed sooner than previously would have been possible. And it will also allow for the programming of additional projects in the outer years of the program. And that varies a bit among the three primary construction programs, but more details to come on that. And just as a reminder, the Transcom Technical Advisory Committees next week will meet to make recommendations on funding of additional projects for those programs. And then after giving the councils of government and the Active Transportation Committee opportunity for input, those recommendations from the TACs will go to Transcom at their April meeting. And Transcom will make recommendations that the regional council can take action on at their May meeting. So thank you, Mayor Shepherd. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. So now we do have some board modifications that need to be done to the tip. I'm going to turn the time over to Ben.
Thank you, Mayor Shepherd. Grateful for the opportunity to talk about the Transportation Improvement Program. And as many as you're aware of, it has an awesome acronym called the TIP. And to remind us what the TIP is, it's a 6-year program of the highway and transit projects for the Salt Lake, West Valley, and Ogden-Layton urbanized areas. This is where the rubber hits the road, and not, well, I guess use that pun. The long-range plan, all of that is working together to identify large projects. The TIP is where these projects are programmed. It's a compilation of the projects from the various federal, state, and local funding programs for all of the cities and the counties in the region, as well as the Department of Transportation and UTA. So the program will implement the long-range highway, transit, and active transportation plans for the region, and it helps us meet the short-range needs of the area, as well as provide for the maintenance of our existing system. But due to the dynamic nature of the projects, as all of you are aware, there's a regular modification that takes place because of the timing of funding or adjustments to the project scope. As Mayor Shepherd referenced, we had a board mod that went before Transcom before, and a copy of those tables is attached to your meeting material. And we have another board modification that will require your approval to be amended into the TIP. It's important to note that the projects included in this proposed amendment are either included in phase 1 of the regional transportation plan, or are not regionally significant, or are exempt projects that do not need to be reviewed for conformity and consistency with the state implementation plan according to the federal law. Thus, it does not require a 30-day public comment period, but the review and comment period or opportunity is this meeting here as we will review these projects. A copy of the project tables and a copy of the resolution to modify the 22-27 TIP is included in your meeting materials. And I'll briefly review each of the projects associated with the board modifications or the TIP amendment before you today. So our very first project, this is a project in Salt Lake County. It's in the city of Mill Creek on 4500 South. The scope of this project is to construct a new sidewalk along 4500 South between 1500 East and 1550 East on the south side of the roadway. This project was initially approved and funded in 2019, and the current estimates show that this project to be underfunded at this time. Mill Creek City is requesting to add an additional $300,000 to the project on account of the increases to the right-of-way, the storm drain, and utility impacts, as well as material inflation. So the initial project cost was about $357,000 plus, and with the additional funds brings the total project cost of $657,000 plus. The next project that we have to review is also in Salt Lake County. This is a project in West Jordan on 8600 South. The scope of the 8600 South project is to construct a new roadway between 5600 West and 6000 West, which will also cross the Mountain View corridor. Here we are looking east as it would cross from where the 5600 West is, and then where we are looking, we're looking west on the first couple and then east on the second one from 6000 West. During the design of the project, an existing sewer line was identified in the Mountain View corridor, which would be too close to the new bridge that will span the Mountain View corridor. So there is a Mountain View corridor utilities transportation location project. This project has been used to relocate utilities throughout the Mountain View corridor, and it is proposed that funds from the Mountain View corridor utilities transmission location. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Get nervous, went backwards. Anyway, it is proposed that the funds from the Mountain View utilities transmission location project be transferred into the current 8600 South project for relocation of the sewer line that will accommodate the new structure. The next project that we have to talk about, I'd like to initiate the discussion of the next project. Let me begin with last month's Free Fare February. So as you all are aware, February has traditionally been a challenging month for air quality along the Wasatch Front, and we relied heavily on public transit to be a part of the solution to offset the pollution and help improve our air quality. So in an effort led by several of you and supported by numerous local governments, partner government agencies, and private businesses, UTA ran a free fares campaign during the month of February. Fares were free in February across the entire service area of all UTA buses and rail services, including the ski bus, paratransit service, Park City, Salt Lake Connect, and the UTI On Demand. This February was also a time for celebration. So 20 years ago, if you can believe, Salt Lake City came alive with the 2002 Olympic Winter Games. So not only did the Free Fare campaign benefit a clean air effort, but promoted a celebration of an amazing event that has been second to none ever since. So in an effort to support the Free Fare February, that brings our board modification to you today. WFRC proposes to program an additional $500,000 of CMAQ funds to the UTA locomotive rebuild project. This would enable UTA to use $500,000 of the overmatch of local funds toward the expenses of the campaign. So the locomotive rebuild project was initially evaluated and recommended by the Regional Council for partial funding. That was mainly due to the available funding at the time of the project recommendation. This left the bulk of the project to be covered by UTA with other funding. This project will rebuild the UTA locomotive prime mover engines to a Tier 2+ emission standards. Each mover upgrade costs about $629,000. There's 1,800, that'd be a big system. There's 18 UTA locomotive prime mover engines. Proportionally, that equates to about 14 prime mover engines for the WFRC area. It's estimated that rebuilding of the 14 engines or locomotive prime mover engines to EPA standard of Tier 2+ would reduce the total emissions of the criteria air pollutants estimated to around 30,000 kilograms annually. So this board modification before you is to recommend that 500,000 of the CMAQ supplant the UTA overmatch funds. What that does is takes 175,000 from the Ogden-Layton urban area and 325,000 from the Salt Lake West Valley urban area, and adds into the UTA locomotive overhaul. That would give us a total CMAQ funds in the project of 3.4 million plus, and the total UTA funds in this project is still a substantial $5.8 million plus. Total project estimated cost is 8.8+ million. Yes.
Before we go any further, can we ask Carlton to kind of give us an update on how Free Fair February went?
Sure. And Mayor, we're still in the process of finalizing a few numbers, and in a couple of weeks, we'll have a more complete presentation to make. But we saw, and depending on how you compare things, saw about a 20% overall increase in ridership. And on some of the weekends, we actually saw a 200% increase on Front Runner alone. Some of our final couple Saturdays, we had over 10,000 passengers on Front Runner itself, and where normally would have been around 4,000, well, 4,500 or so. So we're very pleased with that outcome. As Ben pointed out, February is not notorious for having red days. I don't think, or I don't remember, although Wayne or somebody probably will correct me, I don't remember any red days in February. I can't attribute it all to Free Fair February, but I think it definitely helped. And in our overhaul, I know we're at least 5 engines we've done, and there may be a 6th one by now. But the results of the overhaul itself are actually proving to be very effective. We're getting better gas mileage, getting cleaner air. And so this commitment by Wasatch Front is really outstanding. It will help us, again, free up some of our local dollars to help cover for the lost fare revenue during February. So we really have appreciated the partnership. And I think we'll learn a lot from it. I know there's a longer study that's just getting underway that will talk about free fare, and we'll be able to have more, complete conversation. But we're very happy with the outcome so far.
Thanks, Carlton. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but I just thought that'd be a good thing to ask. So
no, thanks for asking.
All right, Ben, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trustee. So that brings us to the last page of the board modifications. And to begin this picture, since a lot of us are not down south, I want to start off with the Ovachomo Bridge. As you know, it's part of the Natural Bridges National Monument. Just a little interesting note is that in 1904, the National Geographic magazine publicized the bridges, and the area was designated as a national monument on April 16th in 1908 by President Theodore Roosevelt. This became the first Utah's national monument. So the only reason I really started with this project or this picture, though, is because they both have bridges in the name here. We're going to talk about the Bridge Formula Program Management. This is a new program. It provides an opportunity for funding the rehabilitation and replacement of existing bridges to address deficiencies due to aging and deterioration. The 5-year program from fiscal year 2022 to fiscal year 2026 provides Utah with a minimum of about $45 million per year. The federal funding was already been apportioned to Utah for this program for fiscal year 2022. The department proposes to hire a consulting firm to program or to perform program management And as I go on, just to illustrate how many structures through our state, how many there are, there's several that are piled on top of each other. But this would include assisting and administering, prioritizing, coordinating, preparing, designing, reviewing, managing, and delivering projects associated with the new bridge formula program. Here it is along the Wasatch Front. A lot of structures, a lot of responsibilities. This particular slide, you can see all of the red squares are local jurisdictional structures. The Department of Transportation will do their best to rehabilitate or replace as many as possible on these local structures. So this is a new program. It will set aside 5 million of that 45 million. That 5 million is for the whole 5-year period, but it comes out of the fiscal year 2022 for the management of the bridge formula program. That would wrap up all of the projects in this board modification.
Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. I would, are there any questions for Ben before we move on? Well, seeing none, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the modifications to the 2022-2027 Transportation Improvement Program.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Mayor Caldwell.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Caldwell. All right, motion and a second to approve the board modifications to the 2022-2027 TIP. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That's approved. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Mayor. So our very last is an obligation report. This is an information item for you. So the current transportation bill, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the IIJA, like its predecessor, requires that each MPO, state and public transportation operators cooperate in preparing a list of projects for which the federal transportation funds were obligated for spending during the immediate preceding year. So this is the obligation report for federal fiscal year 2021. This began on October 1 of 2020 and concluded on September 30th of 2021. In your meeting materials, there are graphs that show the statewide obligation. This is the federal matching funds obligated by throughout our state is more than 451 million. 420 plus million of that was the federal share, and then 30 plus million is local match. There's also a copy or a graph that identifies within the Wasatch Front area an estimated amount of 266 million plus of funds obligated. That's the 248 plus million plus the local match. I say estimated because some projects cross into outside of our urban area. But also that reflects 60% of the federal funds were spent within the Wasatch Front area. Significant amount of work done by all of you in the Department of Transportation and UTA. Grateful, but a tremendous amount of effort and a lot of work. There's also the program that this body has the specific responsibilities to program. That's our STB program, our CMAQ program, our TAP program, as well as information pertaining to UTA's federal funds. And this graph reflects only the federal transportation funds, not any of the local and non-federal funds there. There's also the tables that identify every project that shows the obligations and de-obligations. And there's a lot more information if you have any questions. But that would conclude the information I have for this item, Mayor.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report. We'll turn the time back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So let's move on to the Budget Committee then. Mayor Caldwell.
On mute. On mute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate all the reports that have been given so far. I'll give information on item 6, the Budget Committee. So we had a release of the draft fiscal year 23 WFRC goals, budget, and unified planning program for public comment. The budget committee met earlier this month and is bringing one action item to the council. Item 6A is the release and review of the public comment of the draft fiscal year 23 goals, budget, and the unified planning work program. In your packets are a draft of the fiscal year 23 WFRC goals, budget, and unified planning work program that outline the goals, activities that WFRC plans to undertake in the fiscal year 2023. These materials are prepared by staff in coordination with the budget committee. The budget committee is recommending that the council approve releasing the fiscal year 23 draft WFRC goals, budget, and unified planning work program for public comment. An updated version of these materials will be prepared and presented to the council at its meeting on May 26, 2022 for final approval. Andrew, I will push it over to you to provide a brief overview of the materials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to everybody for participating in this discussion. I am going to give a brief overview of the proposed goals, budget, and work program for next year. I'll be brief in the interest of time, but I want to be really clear with you that we take very seriously our stewardship of the budget and the goals, the resources we have available. So if anyone now or at any point has any questions for us, for me, or for anybody on our staff, we are more than welcome to talk with you and go into as much detail as you would like about the budget issues. It's really one of the most important things I think that we do as staff is try to manage the budget and make sure we have great transparency. So I'll say thanks so much to the budget committee for getting into these matters in detail. Before talking about those materials, I do want to give all of you a staffing update with regard to our budget process and our finance process. Many of you will remember that about 6 months ago or so, our longtime excellent CFO, Lovett Baumgardner, retired after 26 years of service with Wasatch Front Regional Council. We hired a great replacement for her, whose name is Kurt Maurer. Kurt actually lives out in the Uinta Basin, and it was Kurt's intention to move to the Wasatch Front with his family and then carry on this job. Well, we all know that housing affordability is a huge issue in our region, in our state, and in our region. And unfortunately, the place that Kurt is moving from, the Uinta Basin, is one of the only areas in the state that does not have really rapid housing appreciation. So the prices are relatively low there, and he was trying to sell low effectively and then buy high on the Wasatch Front. He has a young family, he wanted some space, and unfortunately, he was just not able to make it work. So we're sad about that, but we are very happy to be able to introduce you to Marion Florence, who is our new CFO. We had actually already hired Marion to work with us on our financial matters, and she comes to us with great qualifications and experience. We're thrilled to have her with us. Marion, will you just say hello so that people see you here?
Yep, here I am. I've got a bright light right behind me, but I'm right here.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion. Welcome to WFRC. We're so happy to have you. And I also just want to give a special tribute to Lovett, who, when she heard that Kurt was going to be leaving WFRC, she volunteered to come back part-time to help us with the transition with Marion. That's just the kind of dedicated person that she is, dedicated to our mission. And so much appreciation to Lovett and to Kurt, and a big welcome to Marion.
Is Lovett on the call?
She is not, Mayor. She joined us for our budget committee, but because she's part-time and retired now, we said, we're okay. We got the council meeting.
All right. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
Nevertheless, she's to be congratulated for doing that. And, I enjoyed the short time that I worked with Kurt, reviewing checks and invoices and things like that. And this is a cautionary tale for us, ladies and gentlemen, about our housing affordability issue in Utah, and particularly along the Wasatch Front and the footprint of WFRC. So,
Indeed.
Welcome, Mariana. We look forward to working with you as well.
Thank you. So let me jump in now. Again, restatement, Mayor Caldwell noted, now the action before you is to release the budget goals and work program for review and public comment. And then we would come back if any modifications need to be made in May for final approval for next year. I'm going to start with the goals, and what you will notice. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen there. Okay. What you'll notice, what we did is we actually sent to you a comparison document in the materials we distributed that shows the proposed changes from one year to the next. That can get a little messy. So I'm just showing you the clean proposed version this year. I will note that in the goals for this year, the top line, there are 4 top line goals, and we are not proposing any changes in those goals because that reflects the continuity that we have in our work from one year to the next. So the first one is, collaboratively advancing the Wasatch Choice vision. We've had a lot of talk about that today already. And my gosh, that's going so well, I think, in terms of the work that you're doing locally, what the state is endorsing, so much embrace of the Wasatch Choice vision and its principles as a path forward for our community. I will highlight 2 things in here. One is the work on leveraging public assets for healthier communities. Some of you may remember that Intermountain Healthcare gave WFRC a $500,000 grant to work with you to leverage publicly held assets in our work. And then second, the work we talked about that Representative Waldrip talked about with HB 462 and developing stationary plans. We will help you. Those of you that need to do this, we are here for you. We will work with you on that. The second high-level goal is effectively administering our ongoing plans and programs. This is all the work that we do on an ongoing basis. The regional transportation plan that Ted talked about, the TIP that Wayne and Ben talked about, and all of our other programs. I'll highlight 2 things this year. Again, on the regional transportation plan that Mayor Ramsey said is we're in year 3 of a 4-year cycle. Next year, what we're going to be doing is phasing. That means by time, when are projects needed, and then applying financial constraint, meaning how much resources do we anticipate to have available for projects. And then we'll take that regional transportation plan that the council will have the opportunity to adopt and incorporate that into Utah's unified transportation plan, how we work together with all of the partners across the state on transportation issues. That's the second goal. The third goal is providing subject matter expertise to federal, state, and local officials and policymakers. This gets again at the work that we do at the legislature and in Congress that we've talked about already here. I'll highlight to you here something that's new for this year on the federal side. The bill passed, and now we have to work to coordinate all of us to be in the best position to compete for those discretionary grant dollars that are available that Miranda talked about. And we are also at the same time working with our national partners and associations directly with USDOT as they write the regulations and rules to implement all of those new federal programs. So we're working on that. The fourth goal and last goal is striving for organizational excellence. This is more of an internal goal. And I'll note here, of course, it's critical for us to ensure accountability and transparency with regard to our resources and the budget. I'll talk about that in a moment when I focus on the budget. Also, our greatest asset here at WFRC is our amazing team, our staff here at WFRC. And we want to make sure that they're happy, healthy, and highly productive here at WFRC. Part of that, candidly, is this is something we started last year. We talked about this with you, is updating our compensation and performance evaluation practices as needed to ensure market competitiveness. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But the last thing, and I suppose this has been hinted at also, is adapting to a post-pandemic new normal. We thought we were going to do it today. We were going to have our first meeting in 2 years in person. Didn't happen today because there's a lot of other things going on. Representative Schultz earlier said, let's get together. Everybody always says in concept, that's great. But I'll tell you informally, when I sent out to all of you, hey, we're not going to have our meeting in person today, 10-1, the response was, thank you, that makes my day a lot easier. So we'll see how it goes. We definitely want to have you all here with us together when we can. I will note that just starting this week, our staff is back in the office officially at least 2 days a week. Our offices have been open, people have been coming in, but now we're at least 2 days a week in the office, and it's real nice being able to be together. That's the goals. I'm going to talk about the budget in a moment, but Mayor Caldwell, I just want to pause and see if anybody has any comments or questions about the goals before I move on to the budget itself.
Any comments or questions? All right, Andrew, let her
There are
go.
none. Let me get to the budget. And then this again gets back to this point about our transparency and our budget stability. I'm going to hit on a few items here, again, relatively briefly. First, the revenues and then the expenditures. On the revenue side, as most of you know, the overwhelming majority of the funds that we use here at WFRC for our operations are federal funds. They come via that IIJA and the federal dollars. It's great because federal transportation dollars have increased somewhat in the IIJA. So we get a bit of a boost, which allows us to address inflation and then also have stability out over the length of that 5-year transportation bill, which is really terrific. We also get funding from the state, a relatively modest amount, $140,000 a year. Just this year in the past legislative session, the state appropriated another $150,000 on an ongoing basis to us and to the other associations of government around the state. That's going to enable us, and the intent of that was that we could hire another person to work with you and do more local technical assistance for you. And then the last element of the budget is actually the funds that come to us from the county partners. And I'll show you here the local contributions. The cities do not make contributions directly. For many, many years, the counties have effectively done that on behalf of the cities. It's in the aggregate, it's a relatively small amount, but we greatly appreciate it. It's tied basically to population. And it's also tied to a 3-year look back at CPI. So this year, those contributions would increase by 2.6%. That's on the revenue side, a stable picture, and I'm happy to be able to note that to you. Now let me shift.
Even though inflation's 7.5.
Well, that's part of the issue that we have to deal with. The federal increase in the funds, the planning funds that come to us, will enable us to address those inflationary impacts. So unfortunately, we're not in a situation to take the increase and say we can do all new things with that, but it will at least allow us to have that stability into the future.
If you feel good staying even, then
that's right. I know.
Then I'm okay.
Well,
but that's a conversation we need to have.
Thank you. And actually, I'll get into that just a little bit, Mayor Caldwell. On the expenditure side, I think this is the simplest way to look at our budget, is expenditure by function. Our budget actually is relatively simple on the expenditure side. The overwhelmingly largest costs in our budget are 2 items. That's our salaries and our employee benefits for our 30 current staff, and we're going to be hiring 2 additional. One I already mentioned, funded out of the state funds, and then another also in our community and economic development space, funded out of the additional federal funds that are coming to us. And then contractual hiring consultants is the second other main item. I'll just point out to you overall that the total budget here represents an 11% increase proposed for FY23 above the estimated FY22 spending. The FY23 proposed budget is actually a 17% decrease below the FY22 budget. And I'll explain how that happened in just a moment. But let me come back again to this salary and employee benefits. That represents full-time anticipated staffing for our 30 people plus 2 new positions. The 22 was a little lower because we had periods of vacancies in some of our positions. It also includes an aggregate 12% amount as an increase above the base to allow us to, kind of, Mayor Caldwell, to your point, address inflationary impacts So we've got a 12% that would enable us to, in the aggregate, look at COLA, merit, also market-based adjustments reflecting the market study that we have been doing for the last several months against our peers here and nationally. And then also, we just have a really tight labor market, as I know all of you are experiencing. I want to be clear that 12% also covers any adjustments to our health insurance, and it does not mean that we are going to spend all of it, nor does it mean to our employees that we are necessarily having increases of that amount. That amount covers the entirety of adjustments to compensation and benefits, and then we work within that amount to try to make sure that we're meeting the market. That point about not spending everything in that line item applies to the entirety of the budget. We are not a use it or lose it organization. We have all of these line items are maximums, and we try to be as prudent as possible and actually hold down our expenditures. And usually we come in well under budget. The next item is on the big one is on the contractual side. What happens on our contractual line item is that every year we budget the full amount of our anticipated contracts. The biggest item there is TLC contracts, our joint program that we do with WFRC, UDOT, UTA, and Salt Lake County. Ted talked about this a little bit before. We budget the full amount in 1 year. Those projects run over typically over the course of multiple years. Whatever we don't finish in 1 year, we roll then into the next year. That's why you see a boost from 21 to 22. We rolled projects forward. What we anticipate right now is estimated in 22. We'll spend less than budget. And then when we come back in October, having seen the entirety of what ended up happening for the full 22, we will adjust those numbers again and do the final carry forward or roll forward from 22 to 23. That's from those of you that have been doing this with us for a while, you know that's a regular part of our process on contractual. The other big item is we had about $1.7 million budgeted in 22 for our household travel survey. This is to evaluate people's travel behaviors and preferences, which impacts our transportation modeling. Given the pandemic, it just threw a wrench into everybody's travel behavior. We didn't do that this year. So we're pushing that into next year. That's why you sort of see that big bump in 22 in contractual, but we're going to push that into next year. Other than those two line items, basically our budget is pretty relatively low and pretty simple. You see some big percentage increases, but those are just over 22 estimated spending. The budget basically stays pretty flat, and those are kind of contingencies as we have our normal budget items. I would be happy, Mr. Chair, to entertain any questions or comments that anybody has about any of this. I will note to you that in the materials that were sent out to you, there was detailed info in the memo, and then also in the footnotes to all of these items. I am happy to talk about any of it now, or mercifully not, for your sake, and respond to any questions that any of you may have offline. But Mr. Chair, that would conclude my report, unless anybody on WFRC staff is thinking, or from our budget committee is thinking, hey, you missed XYZ, and in which case I'll obviously let them chime in here. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Mr. Chair, or to me, Andrew?
I'm sorry, to you.
I'm not the chair anymore.
Emotion.
Well, part of what I'm looking through on the comments is that everybody's super disappointed that we don't have the Cutler's cookies anymore. But I don't see anything else. If anybody has other comments or things to add, would be happy to entertain them.
I realize that, and that I did not talk about, but it is very important, the Unified Planning Work Program. That is an extensive document that is also part of what we're asking you to approve now, that reflects the full range of activities that we will or may potentially work on over the course of the next year. That is required to be developed pursuant to the federal law. And so in the aggregate, we have the goals, the budget, and the work program. That is what is before you for you to authorize for release for public comment.
Okay. Any other discussion and or comment on this? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that we move that the council release the draft fiscal year 2023 Wasatch Front Regional Council goals, budget, and unified work plan work program for review and public comment.
I'll second
that. So move, Mr. Sub Chair.
I've heard a couple of seconds. Thank you so much. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Hearing none, that passes. That will complete the budget committee report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Mayor Walker, active transportation.
I'll be quick. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We got good news. It's kind of historic news actually from this particular front. Last year, the legislature, the last legislative session, 40 million was appropriated to be used for paved pedestrian or paved non-motorized projects. This historic state investment in active transportation will require a 20% match, resulting in at least 48 million being spent on active transportation projects throughout Utah. Added to last year's 42 million in state commitment, including local match, that equates to 90 million over the past 2 years. And if other local and federal funding is included, Utah may truly get up close to around $100 million in active transportation funding. This investment is going to allow us to create safe, family-friendly bicycle backbone networks, which we can use to improve our quality of life and transportation. Going forward for 2022, our plan is to improve the active transportation network and build priority projects, that the ones that get the most bang for the buck, educate on the benefits of active transportation, and coordinate on policy, including mobility and e-bike adoption. And I'm again renewing my invite to any of you that would like to be e-bike adapted. I'm happy to take any of you on a ride up Corner Canyon. We'll ride a paved trail to get there, and we'll ride the dirt trail when we get there. So
Mayor Walker and Jim Harvey, really? E-bikes?
E-bikes, Caldwell.
All right, I'm in. I'm just giving you crap.
Yeah. Yeah, and my only thing is, if you come ride an e-bike, bring $7,000 with you.
I think Mayor Caldwell.
You get to find the wattage there.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. Thanks. We're looking up.
Amazing work. I'm just gonna add, and then I'll be out.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Commissioner Farrar, do you want to talk about the WFEDD?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And let me just make the comment. I'm happy to bring an e-bike down. So, and Mayor Caldwell, when he gets to be close to our age, he'll understand e-bikes become a necessary component in your garage. So anyway, thank you for that work, Mayor Walker. We just held our first meeting last week, last Wednesday, with the WFEDD. We've added several new members to that committee, to that board this past year, and I encourage everybody on this Zoom call to please check out the WFRC website, check out those new members, welcome them to the WFRC, and make sure you ask any questions regarding the Economic Development District. I'm sure they'd be more than willing to do that. So our main project that we discussed during that meeting was, and at the end of 2021, that you're probably aware of, was the annual comprehensive economic development strategy that's being programmed for us by Better Cities here. And in addition to that regional annual update, the Wasatch Front Economic Development District and the WFRC will be participating in the statewide comprehensive economic development strategy that's being driven by the governor's office of P&B, and also part of the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission that I participate in. This statewide CEDS is a project that will help bring all 7 associations of the government, including the WFRC, as well as key stakeholders, to produce that statewide plan for economic opportunity. It's similar to the Unified Transportation Plan that our board is participating in. And we look forward to that statewide effort under the economic opportunity committee. And as we move forward, we'll have additional updates as that strategy program progresses. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Farrar? Seeing none. Thanks, Gage. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Mayor Allen, do you want to talk about the CDBG grants?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the Wasatch Front CDBG Regional Review Committee and also the CDBG State Policy Board, I think that gives me authority to kind of turn some time over to Christy Dahlberg, our AOG rep. Turn all the work over to her, have her report on our award announcements. So Christy, I hope you're on there.
I am here. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I'll just talk really briefly about the year we had in CDBG. We had just over $1 million in funding available. We had 7 applications and we were able to fully fund 5 of those. There are 6 projects listed here. One of the projects was a multi-year project, and this year will be the 2nd year of funding for that project. So that brings our total up a little bit, but we had some really great projects, majority water infrastructure projects. But as you can see, we had some fire equipment and the community center as well. So great year for us in CDBG, and we're excited to make these work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Christy. Any questions for Christy? Back to you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay, Executive Director's report, Andrew.
Well, it'll be really brief. We've covered a lot of great territory today. I appreciate everybody's time. There's a lot of challenges in our region and a lot of positive things that you all are doing and we're able to do together to make sure that we continue to have great quality of life in the future, investing in infrastructure, planning for the future, making sure that we have housing and choices so that our kids and grandkids will still want to live here when they get older. And it's just a privilege to be able to work with all of you. So, Mr. Chair, I'll wrap it up there and turn it back to you.
Okay, well, thank you. So is there any other business? Okay, our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, May 26th. And then we do have an active transportation committee meeting on the 13th of April. Transcom meets on the 14th of April. The League's mid-year, Utah League of Cities and Towns mid-year convention is April 20 to 22 in St. George. And UX Legislative Management Conference is in April on the 26th through the 28th in Ogden. So I think that's everything. And we're ready for everybody's favorite motion finally.
Motion to adjourn, Mayor Caldwell. And I want to know where Bob Dandoy is.
Second.
I'm doing good, Andrew, obviously.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a great week.